Ono versus Spencer Lee. Oh my goodness, this was great. First off, this took place in Wrestletown, USA. I like that to start with. Second, Iowa came out. I mean, this environment was so awesome, and there's only a few places in the country. There's only a few places in the world you could pull off a big wrestling event, but a big senior level wrestling event. I mean, the World Championships and the Olympic Games has a hard enough time. Those are not guaranteed sellout tickets. This was a really big deal. But you got to start with that. You got to start with the environment. Like what Flo came in and pulled off from a visually stimulating production standpoint. This was awesome. This is as good as it gets, right? Like when you set out as a little kid with a dream, you dream of something like this. This is literally like what Spencer Lee walked into, and the energy, and you see that on Spencer. That matters to him. I mean, you saw that in his body language when time ran off that clock. You saw that pain, but that pain actually comes from a positive place of drive, and that drive is directly stimulated by the audience. So the last time that I have seen something like this, and we used to do Russia versus USA all the time. We would do this 2 and 3 times a year. Some team would come over, a Soviet team. This is when it was still called the CCCP and the USSR. Anyway, they would come over. But this is before the breakup of the Soviet Union. So, I mean, these guys, they would bring their biggest powerhouses, and we would attach that. I got to watch that duel one time down at MacArthur Court. I got to watch that duel one time in Portland, Oregon. John Smith wrestled, had Sarkeesian, the finals. I got to watch that duel one time at the Western Regionals in Pocatello, Idaho. And they brought in our senior team, and they did a whole session at night, which was the Russians versus the Americans. But it is so incredibly rare now. First off, it's that same feud. It's still Russia, USA. However, for whatever reason, nobody has ever had any success ever in promoting anybody versus the USA aside from Russia. Like they've tried to do it before, but they've never had a level of success. Now Japan comes out with a team at the Olympic Games. It's almost unexplainable how where they were a year before versus where they ended up. Now we got all these feuds. And Ono and Lee is the beginning of a potential feud. But the last time that I've seen a match of this magnitude outside of a World Championship or Olympic Games, I would have to go back to Bela Glazov versus Smith. And I'm trying to think of the year of that. Was that 90? Might have even been 89. It was said to be the biggest wrestling match of all time. Match of the century, they called it, and Smith ended up taking him down 7 times. They were worth a point apiece. Smith had 7 points, just Olympic champion taking apart another Olympic champion. It's just a very special thing. So, fast forward. The Japanese gentleman that David Carr wrestled, I just know him, and I know some of you know his name. I just know him as the guy that beat Dake. They had that match in the semis. It was crazy. Dake spotted him about 7 or 8 points. If you go back and you rewatch that match, there was a number of points on decisions that Dake made that actually scored against him. It was a very strange wrestling match. So we bring that gentleman in, and he takes on David Carr. And Chuck Kearney told me that David Carr will be the world and Olympic champion as long as he can get out of the country. As long as he can get on a team, which at 74 kilograms, right? And this is before you're even having to deal with the O'Toole and Levi Haynes that are going to be here by 2028. But Chuck Kearney told me that David Carr has the skills, he has the ability like his father, and that he will be the world and Olympic champion if he can get to the team. So basically what Chuck Kearney is stating is that Carr can beat everybody. He can deal with all of the foreigners. He just domestically, to get through Dake and Burroughs, whatever that ringer is, Messenbrink, be his hardest challenge. And I think that we saw glimpses of that last night. I think that David Carr surprised himself. And I've seen David Carr in 3 different wrestling matches that I could very clearly isolate for you, where he surprised himself. And David Carr is a little bit better than David Carr thinks he is. He still does have a real humbleness to him. He still is a fan. He still looks up to some of these older guys. Like it's just one of these things. And if that arrogance ever comes, if David Carr realizes and accepts that he is king of the world, he's a handful. And I only say that because last night, even he got to 10 points, but he stopped at 10 points. He was surprised that he had him. He started eating up clock. He did that same thing with Messenbrink in the NCAA finals where he didn't have to. This wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a surprise to me as an outsider watching David Carr put up these 10 points. But I can still tell when he's doing it that he has not fully accepted his greatness yet. And when he does, look out.